go. So we got in with the convoy of over 100 ships, and we started to cross. And it was the third day out, and we were just off of the Bermuda Islands. It was brilliant sunshine. We were going around with our shirts off and just, enjoying the cruise. But the aircraft carrier that was there was just bringing in the morning patrol, all the fighters that had been up. It's about 11 o'clock in the morning. And but the ship had to zigzag back and forth amongst the convoy in order to stay with the convoy and give proper heading for the ships to come in for landings. I had the King's Row seat, which was at the very point of the bow. And so we were in a position so that we could see all this. Before, we'd only seen it on Movie Town News. But we could see the flagman, we could see the catch trip when the planes came in and all, and we were just eating it up. Here it was in real life. And I know that I was one of the first person, if not the very first, to notice that the battleship, the carrier crossed us about half a mile in front of us. And then I just happened to notice that there is a destroyer coming after that battleship. Now, it wasn't long to figure out, too, that we were on a collision course. Us going in one direction and they were going to come in and cross, and it was unavoidable. But I looked up and I saw our officers when they saw it, so I know that I saw that before they did. But anyway, I immediately turned around and started running back as hard as I could go. I wish I could have timed it. But I got about midships before I found a place where I just made a flying leap and landed belly flop, and I had something to grip hold of. And I barely got there in time before the collision. They tied into us we tied into the tail end of the destroyer. And of course, quite a jolt. Well, as soon as things settled down a little bit, I stood up so I could see what was taking place. And now I can see this, the destroyer there was right across from us. And it turned out that we had jarred a depth charge loose in the course of that collision. Now, here's a sailor that spotted it, fortunately. It was rolling toward the deck, and listen, those flat decks on those ships like that are not going to stop anything. And now this guy made a diving leap and caught that depth charge before it went overboard. Otherwise, I would have been saying hello to the angels with all that munitions. And I gave that old boy the high sign, both hands, and I would hug his neck to this day because he literally saved our lives right there on that spot. But anyway, now the convoy proceeded, and I don't know why we weren't dry docked and sent back to the States 3 days out, but we had to maintain the voyage. But we couldn't stay up with the convoy. We had a crippled ship, and the convoy just gradually moved off and left us, but we could still see it. In fact, I had a guard duty at 2 to 4 o'clock in the morning. I don't know what I was supposed to be looking for, but early that morning then, while I was doing my guard duty, I could see the convoy off in the big distance, and then they disappeared. That meant now that we were all alone. We made the rest of that crossing, and the reason for 6-knot Nora is because that was the top speed of that little old ship that we were on. And so it took forever. But see, now that was what the subs were looking for, the wounded duck out there in the middle. And the good Lord just took care of us because fortunately they didn't find us. Now, we ran into some storms before we got there. There were times we had some 50-foot waves that And when a wave, 50-foot wave goes up, that means there's a big 50-foot drop right down there just somewhere. And when a ship get off there so that it was overbalanced, then we'd drop down to the bottom of that spot. So we'd get pretty good jolted. But anyway, we went on to Oran, North Africa, and then they decided, well, maybe we better dry dock this guy. So we spent a couple of weeks in fact, they had Tent City there where they had for people to just come in and while they were waiting all. It was 2 weeks before another convoy came along to pick us up, and they took us on the way, and we went to Naples. Now, I found out later that the original convoy that we were with had, instead of going to Naples, they had gone around on the other side to Bari, and while they were still in harbor there, over 100 ships in the harbor, the Germans put up the last big air raid they had. They said they just tied everything they could get together they could put in the air. And I talked to some of them later, and they said that the Germans, they had these Stuka dive bombers. They were coming in. They got caught up on the deck, and they'd run on one side and then run on the other side. And there was one ship that was just loaded with munitions and ammunition and all. It was hit and it blown up. Another ship had a lot of chemicals on it, and that was hit. So you never know when you're how fortunate. Whatever your problem may be, it could have been worse.
Walt, your assignment was ordnance.
Yes.
Could you describe and explain what ordnance is?
Okay. Now, actually, we were ordnance and supply. Now, ordnance. So we had two different departments. The ordnance department as such would be anything that mechanical, motors, guns, anything of that nature that needed repair or fixed up and all. The supply department then dealt with all the bombs and ammunition that was used on the flights. And when I had an opportunity to get together, I never would see the flight crews because I'd see the ground people that were there permanently. But the flight crews would come in and be there for maybe 3 months or so, would get their missions and they were gone. But anyway, when I got together with the people at the first reunion, I told them all, I said, I want you to know that my fingerprints were on every 500-pound bomb that you dropped on any mission that you flew. So I made a direct contribution to our war effort. Now, the B-17, we knew that we had a better plane than the 17. It was very, very argumentative about it, but the B-24 was definitely. Well, it was, at that time, it was the most durable plane, and it was, we had several occasions to prove it with some of the ships that made it back in and landed. One time we had 3 ships with the brakes blown out. And they had emergency, they had everybody lined up along the runway and all, and because they'd called in ahead, that they were coming, and they would come in now, and remember, there's nothing to stop them. They're just rolling like heck. But it was the first time that they ever used a parachute. They dropped a parachute out on each side and used that for a drag. And from there on in, that became standard procedure.
Great. Good job.
Good job. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's
Great.
a great story.
You came from,
That's
it's
being
not,
recorded.
it will be maybe a different
Turn
town,
off the-
449th, no matter what. Okay, so that's why we're,
Now we are.
okay, go ahead and state your name and your current address and phone number.
My name is Harvey Gann.
You live?
Born in 1920, and I live in Lago Vista, Texas at the present time.
And your phone number?
My phone number is area code 512-267-1974.
Okay, just look at me now. Okay, ready? Okay, we're gonna wait just a few seconds. And
My name is Harvey Gann. My nickname is Mo. It was given to me in prison camp. My hometown at that time was Austin, Texas. At that time, I was 24 years old when I was inducted. I received my training in quite a number of places all over the states. I started out in Keeslerville, went on to Blythe, California, and Bomber Plant in Michigan, and basic training different places all over the state. I think we followed the same pattern as most of the people in the service did. I arrived in Grottaglia, Italy on January the 7th of 44.
The crew.
I arrived in Grottaglia, Italy on January the 7th of 1944.
And what was the name of your crew?
With my crew?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, picked up my crew in Bruning, Nebraska before we left. We got together and we flew the southern route down through South America and over to Dakar, in Africa, and on to Grottaglia. Duration 7th, I was inducted on September the 14th of 42, and got out on November the 19th of 45. My rank at the time got out was tech sergeant, flying as an engineer, flight engineer, and top turret gunner. Name of the crew I had was joined Ben Kendall, was a pilot for my crew. And I guess I want to say that I was shot down. I flew 14 missions and was shot down on the 14th mission, flying out of Grottaglia. Was shot down over Udine, Italy on January 30th of 44. And taken prisoner when it hit the ground. I must say that I was the only survivor out of my plane when it was shot down. The fighter planes, ME-109, shot us down over the target. And I bailed out just before the plane blew up, and all of my members were killed except me. I was taken prisoner immediately and wound up in Dulag-Luft, Frankfurt, Germany for interrogation. Stayed there several days and then was moved up along with many other airmen that was shot down and taken to Heidekrug, East Prussia, which was a camp number 6, prisoner of war camp. When I got there, I was met. First thing, one of the prisoners I met was my friend and my former ball turret gunner who had been shot down 2 weeks earlier, Chuck LaMarca. Chuck and I immediately got together and decided that we didn't want to stay in that place, so we formed a plan to get out, and we did. On March the 11th, myself and Chuck and Jake Roughton and Tom Stapleton, 4 of us, planned to get out, and our plan was to cut through the fence. I had a pair of cutters made from an old door hinge that the British resident of that camp, POW, had made or had gotten through some manner. I didn't try to inquire because I didn't want to know too much. Anyway, I was able to cut through the fence, and we got out. We escaped. We were gone for 7 days, and then we were recaptured, and we spent some other time in solitary confinement around different jails, and escaped from the jail a second time. We were only gone for 3 days that time. We wound up spending 81 days out in civilian jails around the Germany, and finally we were taken back to our prison camp and given 31 days in solitary confinement there, and then we were put back in among our other residents there at the camp. We stayed there until about July the